All right, hello everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live, where we're going to be talking about some cool stuff. We're going to give everyone a couple of minutes to join. We'll start exactly in about a minute and a half. Vikram, you look like you do a lot of reading in the back over there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Trying to go paperless, my man. We were just talking. Vikram's in Dallas. Jennifer, you're in Boston, I assume?
North of Boston, actually. Close. I used to live in Boston, but now I live in a place no one's even going to know. Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, no, it's really lovely. It's very different than Boston, but it's
Um,
beautiful here.
Beautiful, beautiful places to go visit the nature if you like that.
Yeah, the outdoors is lovely here. That's one of the reasons I came here. I'm a big runner, and it's just prettier running here than urban running. But it's colder. It's actually colder than Boston. I did not anticipate that one.
Ah, there you go. That's
I don't like
the Boston. My daughter is about to start at BU, and we
that.
think I'm dreading the winter visits. Anyways, I think we are ready to start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some talking points through our presentation. Thank you everyone for joining. Um, I'm not one for I'm not an alarmist. However, we did pick a sort of interesting title for this webinar where we're looking at we're talking a lot with our customers, prospects about test automation. As everyone has seen, AI and generative AI are big talking points these days. And I recently read a few things in the press, which kind of brought me to the conclusion that the software development um, paradigm itself is industry itself is going to go through a sea change in the way software is developed. So we figured we'd talk a little bit about that. I am extremely happy to have Jenny, Quinn, and Vikram from our partners, UiPath. UiPath is an AI-based automation platform which is industry leading. So I'm extremely excited to have Jenny and Vikram join us. Just for everyone else's information, my name is Ahmed Zaidi. I'm the CEO and Chief Automation Officer here at Accelirate. We are a automation and AI services provider based in the US. We do a lot of work together with the UiPath team, so I'm extremely honored to have these guys on with us. We'll go through quick introductions. Jenny, if you could please introduce yourself and then hand it over to Vikram as well.
I absolutely can. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Quinn. As you see, I'm part of UiPath. I am a test suite specialist with my colleague Vikram, also at UiPath. And yeah, in terms of me, I've spent really more than a decade, quite a while, in application testing, a lot of time in the SAP world. So really diagnosing the impacts of enhanced packs, support packs, HANA upgrade on testing, and also in the Salesforce world. So happy to be here. And we're looking forward to talking about how AI is transforming application testing. Over to you, Vikram.
Yeah. Hey, guys. My name is Vikram Parolkar. I'm our principal sales solution architect for our test automation team. I support the Americas, and I've been with UiPath since 2018. It's been a roller coaster ride as we kind of started as RPA, traditional RPA company, and have evolved as the space continued to evolve into more of an enterprise business automation company, and now looking into the forefront of AI and embedding AI in all parts of our platform as well. Prior to UiPath, I was at a services provider, Accenture, and learned a lot about the software development lifecycle there. And that's why I chose to specialize in test automation when the opportunity arose.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And for those who haven't seen my LinkedIn profile, I come from my first job out of college was a test automation engineer. I used to work with a software called SQL Robot back in the day. And for those who are in the test world, probably recognize that name. If you haven't been in long enough, that name is no longer a name now, but back in the day it was the thing to use for test automation. So we all here have quite a bit of passion and experience here in testing. So I wanted to start with, for those who haven't, who are not in the in the test world or the software development sort of world, where testing and software validation is a big function. I just wanted to give you a sense of what test automation is trying to address, and why we do it, and the impact of it. So if you look at any organization that develops software, you have a certain number of developers who develop. Let's just say you keep that constant, and every release they're releasing this new code, which you can see in blue there. Right next to it is the new functionality that's being released that needs to be tested. However, as the releases go on, as you can see, not only do testers have to validate just the new functionality, they also have to test everything else that was released prior to it, just to make sure nothing got broken, nothing got impacted, so on and so forth. So as you can see, as releases go on, the regression testing of the functionality that was released prior to the current release continues to go up. And that effort has always been the bane of every QA group that I've ever talked to. The regression testing can't be completed in time. So if you don't have time, then you start looking at risk-based testing and trying to figure out, what should I test, what should I not test? And if you don't make that call, then you always keep increasing the time it takes to do the regression testing. I took some liberty to actually, this was funny, I just did a Google for QA time crunch memes, and for anyone who's in the QA group realizes that when there's a time crunch, it's sort of because software validation happens to be towards the end of the life cycle of the release of the software. You're always crunched, right? QA managers always give their times, and they always get crunched. So I thought this was an apt meme for that phenomena, where every time you give your schedules, they're cut, and that's a very common place where I've seen a lot of time crunch, and the time is cut out of the QA time. So going back to our thing of that, it takes longer and longer to do regression testing. The only way to be able to handle regression testing in the timeframes that you have is to automate. And I've added in here, once you've automated regression testing, what your regression testing efforts may look like as they're automated. So as you can see, the manual effort goes down. You start to run these automated tests that are now run without human involvement. Of course, there's a little bit of human aspect involved in there. That's still in the regression testing effort, the red over there. However, you see that the only way to really be able to manage the testing of software efficiently is to automate. So I just wanted to give this background to anyone who may not recognize the increasing workload that software validation has to in software validation that has to happen as within the software development lifecycle. Now, talking about why we're here today, and that tsunami word that we talked about. I was very surprised. We're looking at ChatGPT early on, very surprised with the code generation capabilities of it. And then the other day, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal that talked about generative AI really making an impact in one of the largest cost and human effort within any large enterprise, any large organization, which is IT itself. We all know that there are large numbers of developers within any enterprise that are writing software. However, we've also seen, you can see some things over there where you've seen not just the Google models, the OpenAI Codex models. They seem to be very good at generating code. What that means is that code that used to take, days to write could be done in hours. You might have snippets that you can generate very quickly. Data models, from going from a data model to an actual SQL DDL could be a matter of minutes if you were able to do that using a generative AI model. The article itself said, most folks within the industry who are looking at this phenomenon think that coding assistants can speed up some tasks by 50%. Now, if you think about it a different way, developers are going to be developing code at a much, much, much faster pace. What that means is if we don't apply some of the same techniques to the testing of that software, we're going to see that although the development timeframes are shrinking, you will continue to see lag in the automation or the testing cycle of that software. And what that really also means is that the amount of code that is going to be released every release cycle is going to be much more. Hence, you have a lot more to test. In fact, if you look at the bottom right, you see that Devin, that's been making a lot of waves, and that's a full coding assistant that gets everywhere from that takes you all the way from requirements down to creating UIs, down to creating widgets, down to creating backend code for you. So when things like these start to get operationalized within software, within the SDLC, and within large organizations that develop software, the logical thing is going to be that there's going to be a lot more code that is developed and released much faster, and hence there is a need to actually speed up the way we test. So generative AI is making waves all over the place. Jenny, you want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing from the street and what the analysts might be saying?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, those comments you made, so relevant. We need to help testers go faster, and automation is key, even from a cost savings perspective, Ahmed. So spot on. The slide that you all see here is actually, it's more of a general slide that I'll just cover off on briefly to set the stage a little bit more for the rest of our content. It's not just about testing here, everybody. So this is actually, you recognize, hopefully those initials, maybe not if you're from Boston Consulting Group, known affectionately as BCG. They actually did a little study on their own about AI in general and its impact on business. And what they noticed in their experience here, they looked at 800 of their direct employees and took a look at those folks. They split them up into people who, in this group, people who use ChatGPT, people who used ChatGPT and had training on ChatGPT, and then the last group being a group that did not use ChatGPT at all in this study of the impact on deliverables, efficiencies, output, and results, and just getting work done fast. And the amazing thing they noticed, and I'm getting to a point here, so bear with me, is that clearly the people that used GPT did better. But what's quite remarkable is that the people who were maybe underskilled or newbies, or maybe the less than stellar performers, got a 43% uptick in speed of delivery and results as compared to a 17% uptick for the best performers. So the takeaway here is really, what does that mean? Is there really an industry that doesn't search hard for good employees and struggle to find resources to do all the work that maybe there's just not enough people working anymore to do? Everyone struggles to find people, including people who are looking for testers. So the message here is that let's consider, could AI be a platform we can stand on to fill the gap of resources we need to support our efforts in really a very minimal marketplace of good people? So just an idea, and I wanted to set that stage up as we get to the next points about AI, Ahmed.
Perfect. So as you can see, look, I think we all know that there's a lot of productivity gain from generative AI, and getting to the crux of our discussion today, what we wanted to present today to the world here and our audience is that generative AI, although is being talked about in many different contexts, marketing, creative applications. I talked about software development and code generation. we think that there is a lot of opportunity for generative AI to make software testing much more efficient. From that perspective, we gathered some more analyst information. And Jenny, you want to go through this as well? I think it's a good segue into how not just general work productivity, what the analysts are saying, what the street is saying on what that impact might be on actual software development and testing.
Absolutely. Yes, these are smart people doing research, so it behooves us to listen to them. A couple of data points here from these three firms. Obviously, many firms are great at doing research, but Forrester has let us understand their perspective on AI, Ahmed, and it said basically, it's kind of amazing that over the past 20 years, all the lists of things we may have wanted to accomplish in software testing have been actually accomplished by AI in less than a year. So that says a lot about, I guess, our pace of the world in general and what we're doing to just go faster. But Forrester really finds that AI has put testing on steroids. IDC did a survey of software development folks and said, what did you think will be the output or the results of this AI-based offering or AI technology on your job? And the number one thing they saw transforming was testing. So that's an interesting data point as well. And then Gartner, lastly, the Gartner Prism below there, they took a look at they found 16 different areas of testing that can benefit from specialized models, large language models, all those parts of AI. So really a huge banner thumbs up for what AI is going to be doing for us as a testing world. Ahmed.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see the IDC one where it actually, where most people think that that's where the biggest impact from generative AI is going to be. And it's really interesting. Like we've been talking about this, and as we can see, there is a lot of application, and within software testing, we'll talk a little bit more about that. However, it's not just tomorrow we're going to start using it, it's all going to be there. I think, as we were preparing for this, we talked about this. This is going to be a journey, and Vikram has created this beautiful slide here, and he has some thoughts on that. So Vikram, over to you on what you think the journey is to be able to get to an autonomous environment.
Yeah, the term AI, it honestly, when you say that to anyone, they automatically think autonomous, they think Terminator 2, right? But in reality, AI, it's a spectrum of capabilities. And when we're talking about using AI in the context of an enterprise or within business, it's important to look at it in a phased approach. The thought that we have is really phase one is all about collaboration of how can I put guardrails around AI? I give it prompts, I give it instructions, it reacts to those instructions, and then I can take action based off of that. In the future, phase two, we might have a proactive collaborator where AI has rules and it's suggesting for us, but still we would be making the decisions. And in that phase three, AI would potentially be able to autonomously execute where humans are merely just doing supervision. But really, for all intents and purposes, all the tools out there and all the tools that you may want to look at, you're going to be starting and looking within the context of phase one, that reactive assistant, where AI is reacting to prompts being led by humans. And that is really the responsible way to implement AI at the initial implementation.
Yeah, I like that progression of powered, partnered, and then driven, right? So initially you're sort of in the driver's seat, then you're in the supervisor's seat, and then you're kind of in the observer state where you're looking at autonomously executed tests and things like that, right? So that's kind of interesting. Interesting progression there, and I think this is a responsible way of doing this as well. So let's get straight into the nuts and bolts of it, right? I think, and I'm gonna give control after this to Vikram. We wanted to, we're always very pragmatic about these things, right? It's great. Everybody talks about generative AI. Everybody talks about it in the context of these are the possibilities. And from our conversations with customers, prospects, and industry leaders, a lot of folks are trying to put in pilots, put in proof of concepts, and trying to figure out what's here now. What can I use? Is it good enough? Has it been productionalized? Has it been put into production? Generally available? Is it here now? We believe that there are a lot of the stuff is here now, and we're going to show you where we think it's applicable, how we think it can be used, and how you can actually start using it now. So one of the ways we think is a good way to explain this is in the testing lifecycle, you have multiple personas, if you may. There may be a business analyst who is testing, who creates documents and test cases, who creates and documents test cases. There may be a test automation developer who actually develops the actual automation that executes those test cases. Then there's a test data architect, and sometimes these things might overlap, but there's a test data architect role, or a persona, if you may, whose job it is to make sure that there's enough test data. We've always had, when you're testing, this is a big challenge. Anybody who's in the software QA world understands the importance of a good test bed that has the representative data that you need to use in order to test your applications. Then there are test environment managers. What environment am I going to test in? What is the data there? Are the applications available? So on and so forth. And then on top of that, the last one is a test manager lead who's responsible for leading the team and making the decisions on what to test, how to test, reporting all the results out. So this is sort of an interesting, there's many interesting characters in here and personas in here that have a lot of work that needs to be done, and a lot of work goes into creating these either documents, test cases, automations, test data, and managing these environments and doing the reporting and so on and so forth. So I'll give this over to Vikram to actually talk through, what these personas are doing and what it is that you have that you can show us to say, how do we address these things, so on and so forth. So go ahead, Vikram.
Yep. So basically, really for each of these roles and each of these personas, we end up taking a look at what are the questions that they might have. So business analyst to tester, they really care about, well, where do I actually get started when I get these requirements from my business users or from my developers? And how can I quickly create test cases? Because they're on a quick deadline. They have a sprint. They have a very large number of requirements they need to test. They need to operate as fast as possible. You have the developers, right? Once they get these requirements and test definitions from those testers, they need to start automating them and building automations, which also needs to happen as fast as possible. The test data architect, they're really questioning, well, how do I generate test data? And every time it's needed, not only for those manual testers, but also for the automations that are being created. Test environment managers, they have a dependency on the test data architect. Once the data is generated, they're responsible for making sure it's actually put into the system under test. And then you have a test manager, wanting to modify their test strategy and adapt it based on everything else that their team is doing. And it's important to note that these groups, they aren't operating as individual silos, right? That they really are a team. And so whatever enterprise solution or test solution that is AI powered, it is important that it be interconnected, that any test data that is generated by an architect can be passed into and implemented into a system under test and be used by the automation developer as well as those manual testers. Any test cases defined by the manual testers can be all the test steps can be easily converted into code by a developer. And so that integration between all of these users is critical because they aren't interacting with their own individual tools in their own silos. They are truly a team.
Perfect.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that's an awesome introduction into this. What I was going to do is I'm going to hand over control over to you, Vikram, where I think so. Interestingly, as we're doing this, and one of the sort of impetuses for doing this was we were seeing very interestingly within, and you can see that UiPath is here, right? So we saw a lot of these things in the UiPath platform that we think address a lot of these things. So from a generative AI use perspective, really wanted to show you what these things, how these can be implemented, and how easy or difficult they might be, and where you can get the value. So Vikram, all yours. You can go ahead and share your screen. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comment section. We'll get them here and we'll answer them.
Yep. And so for each of these personas, I do have videos, but given that this is a call that we want to actually see it in action, for some of these, I'll go ahead and show it live where I can. The first use case we have is around AI-powered test case generation. And again, the persona that I'm going to play in this scenario is a business analyst or a manual tester. And so a manual tester would typically start off with the business requirement in their test management solution. This requirement can come from Jira. It can reside in an Excel file. But once I have that description, within UiPath Test Manager, I do have the ability to generate tests. And this is part of our generative AI autopilot for tester capabilities. As mentioned, it is very important that I, as a user, am providing instructions and giving guidance to my AI partner, my large language model. In this scenario, the large language model has access to the requirement, and I can also provide it additional files and supporting documentation. This documentation can be something as simple as, a diagram, a layout, a process flow, or a description of what that process or solution is. In this case, I've been requested, hey, create tests for a two-way match invoice processing. Now, initially, when I got this requirement, I didn't really know what two-way match invoice processing is. And this is the beauty of large language models. The large language models can have the context, can have the background information of the processes or applications I'm working on. And the manual tester, they don't need to know all the nuances. They're really the experts on, was the test case crafted properly? And that's what they're trying to analyze. And so by giving this information and by giving, additional prompt instructions on make sure the format is given when then, make sure that I have at least 6 test steps or 5 test steps per test case. I can give those instructions and generate the tests. And right off the bat, I'm basically actionizing and developing guidelines for my AI model to operate on. Now, could a tester go into the existing large language models like ChatGPT and do the same thing? The answer is, in theory, yes. But it is important for any enterprise solution to provide a trust layer, because those large language models, while they exist, if you go to unsecure sites like a ChatGPT, well, then Microsoft or whoever owns large language models, Google, AWS, they can use that potentially proprietary information for training purposes. And so it's important that any solution that you use have that AI trust layer in between, such that any inputs you're giving, even though they might be sent to a large language model, they can't be used for training purposes. And more importantly, that you're actually actionizing the results. If I were to use a tool like a ChatGPT, an open source tool or something like that, there's still a step of copy pasting anything that gets defined in those tools and inputting it into my test management system. With Autopilot for Testers, I have the ability to review it directly within the UI. It's already been configured such that I have things like verifying invoice ingestion from email or verifying the PO lookup in my system under test, in this case, SAP. I can review the test cases, click which ones, and immediately create the tests so that they are now available within my test management system. If for any reason I don't like something, right? Oh, there's only 3 steps. I have the ability to go in and refine my instructions that I'm giving, generally regenerating additional tests and things like that. And so we have it here that the test cases can automatically be added and generated. And when I go, those test cases are already available for me and in the background as well.
So Vikram, by the way, interesting. Not only was this, what I saw here was text analysis. You actually had, interestingly, you had images, process flows, workflows in there that, truly multimodal analysis of documents that may define a process or a business requirement, and then generating tests out of that. This was kind of really interesting. As a tester, I remember we used to sit there forever pouring through, the Word document on one end, an Excel spreadsheet on the other end, first make the test cases. Then once you're done with the test cases, go through each one of those steps on the UI and trying to figure out the test scripts, so on and so forth. I'm pretty impressed with this. And this stuff is here now. So it's really cool and interesting to see.
Yeah. And something I wanted to add, Ahmed, based on what you just said, is that it doesn't just end here. We're continuously innovating and adding more and more use cases. And so some of those use cases for that manual tester can be something like, hey, I have a requirement and I know that requirement can help me generate test cases, but can you do a quick quality review? And what you'll see coming out soon from us is the ability to analyze, do an AI quality review, where a COE or Center of Excellence, the test lead, can provide instructions or guidance on what a well-written requirement looks like. And an LM model can do an analysis and provide recommendations for me or a score on what that AI model looks like. Another great example, you mentioned Excel files, Word documents. A lot of work may have already been done by various teams. And so previously, what tools forced you to do is put your test cases in a specific template so that you could actually import them into your test management system. With AI-powered tools, that's no longer the case. You have the ability to take an Excel file regardless of the format, whatever test steps, multiple tabs, things like that, and we'll soon be able to have the power of AI import those requirements and those test cases as well. So it isn't just generating test cases, it is quality reviews, it's import capabilities. There's a plethora of new features and functionality available for that manual tester within a test management system.
That's really cool and awesome. I'm impressed to see this. Let's see what it can do for the automation guys. And for the question in the comments, we're going through a bunch of these use cases. And I'm not sure whether you're asking for automation of applications that use AI or just the application of AI in the use cases and use cases that use AI. But as we go through, you'll see that there's tons of use cases here for each one of the personas.
Yep. Yeah, and so this will definitely touch on, Bhaskar, your comment on AI-powered test case development. I'm now going to switch from that manual tester role and using my persona of a test automation developer. And so in this scenario, a hypothetical scenario is that I have a change request coming in that basically my team is moving from a desktop application to a cloud application. And so I already have a process automated, but now I need to. In this case, the importance here is that I will be able to generate an object repository of all of those objects. Now, tying this over to my test case is that my tester defined a manual test case for me. What I can directly from our studio using our functionality is generate a workflow. And so I'm taking those manual test steps that I created in the previous step, generating, and now combining that with my object repository, I have code automatically ready to run. It might need a here and there, but for all intents and purposes, a lot of the heavy lifting is done for my automatically. And we see the automation running of looking up a PO in my now web interface instead of a previous desktop interface.
Perfect. So you're kind of turning the tables on the developers, saying, "Hey, not only can you develop code fast, I can also develop code really fast." And using the same sort of technologies that the developers are using to develop software faster, we can actually develop the test automations faster using some of these generative AI tools. And it's very cool that you're able to generate from natural language automated tests, recognizing the applications and the various features in there. Yes, of course, we will definitely give you the audio of this, the recording. However, what you missed there was basically you have a change request that came in. The test was written in natural language, and the platform took that natural language and really generated code on the fly using generative AI to actually, there you go, he's showing it to you now, and just generate the code for automation. Of course, any generated code needs to be tested and validated. So you'll have to play around with it a little bit, but most of the heavy lifting of actually doing the coding is done for you. So that is very cool.
Yep.
Oh, I love that, man. That's awesome. All right, let's go to the next one.
Awesome. So great. I now have test cases defined. I have test cases automated. My next expectation is that these automations should be able to run them over and over again. And to run them over and over again, it's important that I have test data. And so I turn to the test data architect and, hey, here's a data schema, right? This is what I'm expecting. Can you just give me 100 records or 1,000 records of data related to that? Okay. And so in this case, I have two data schemas, one related to the invoice, because I'm working with a document in this case, and second with a PO purchase order, so like line items, basically, that reside within that PO. And I don't really, as mentioned, I don't care about one invoice or hundreds of invoices. I meant the thousands of scale. We actually offer a out-of-the-box management marketplace accelerator. And it's very easy to download and set up. But basically, you can just run this attended on your own machine. This will bring up a form, which you can then build that data schema. You can provide an Excel template if you already have a template of what that schema looks like. And you can choose from a number of different large language models. This can be Azure OpenAI, Vertex, AWS, and you're simply providing it a prompt. The difference for this is that it is AI as a workflow now, rather than embedded within a tool. And so you can fully customize what this form looks like, or what the pre-processing or post-processing of any data generated by the large language model looks like. What we see here is even if I don't have a template, I can also pass in columns and details of what my data should be generated. And so we see it do its thing. And in a bit, we're going to have the Excel file and be able to look at it within our downloads folder. Some of the prompts that I fed to this specific example was that the quantity times the unit price should equal the line total. And so those nuances on what test data actually needs to look like and what rules it needs to follow can be built in and sent to the large language model. And then obviously a human user can come in and verify that the data was generated correctly.
Man, I could have used this years and years ago. Trust me, I was a tester for both equities trading systems and fixed income trading systems and all sorts of other systems of record. And the big thing for us, anybody who's done testing knows that the big thing is having enough test data to be able to test all your scenarios, and then the ability to have that data come in every time you run the test. So if your test was to generate a particular PO, and your system under test will warn you every time you try to enter a PO that might be a duplicate PO, you need new data every single time, because then you don't get to test the scenario when it's a new PO. You always get to test the scenario where it might be checking for a duplicate PO. So now you have the challenge of, number one, putting all that stuff together. Number two, then you also have the challenge of making sure that that data makes sense. For example, in this case, unit price and line total needs to equal a certain formula. For us, it used to be, hey, listen, make sure that the settlement date does not fall on one of these on a weekend or a holiday. Or the price times quantity should equal the total amount, and just make sure that all these sort of interesting rules that you had to build in every single time into these very complex Excel spreadsheets can now be generated very quickly, and this is really cool. I think this is one of a very, very useful tools for testers to be able to generate synthetic data that looks like real data and can be used for testing very quickly. Very cool, Vikram. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So next, again, we aren't just silos, right? So once data is generated, we have to now, potentially it's my responsibility, or I can hand it off to a different user. But here we have the persona of a test environment manager. I need to take that data that was generated and put it in my system under test. And so again, I wanted to show you this one live. So let me go ahead and go back to my desktop screen. And in this scenario, you can see I have 3 rows of data. And in this case, I need to generate test documents. So my boss gave me a template. And traditionally, what I would be doing is, okay, I have this Excel file. I go here. I then go into it. I have to find the bill to customer ID, and then I paste it in, so on and so forth. And I have to do that over and over again for one document. Even if I master this, it's probably still going to take me 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. But lucky for me, AI is now a thing, right? So my boss has given me a tool called Clipboard AI. Clipboard AI is essentially focused on automating the copy and paste. Even with RPA, I still had to develop a workflow. Developing a workflow might have saved me a bit of time for the execution, but the development still could have taken a bit of time. And so Clipboard AI solves that problem as well. And so I, as a user, I'm just going to select what data I want to feed into my workflow. Let me actually start from column A. And I'm going to go ahead and copy cells. It's going to analyze my source system. I'm going to then click my target, and I'm going to choose to paste it in the form. And so behind the scenes, automatically, Clipboard AI is going to map my source to my target. Even if words are a bit off, it can do that mapping automatically, is popping up. And that's because behind the scenes, my PDFs are actually automatically populating. And so you can see that 3 PDFs were generated, and literally within seconds, these PDFs are getting generated. And so this kind of capability, it's not just limited to PDFs. For web pages, it can work for Excel to Excel, or Excel into SAP as an example. And quickly, all of a sudden, we're just automating copy-paste capabilities a lot faster. So yeah.
That is very cool. and you kind of adjust a little bit, which goes to, hey, AI is compute intensive, so it probably was doing some compute, which was taking away from the sound processing on your machine. But what you saw there was really, really interesting, right? So the column numbers, the column names to the form fields aren't exact. You have some, over there it says ship to address. Over there, the ship to section is different, but the address is underneath it. So it had to figure out that the ship to address goes in there versus the bill to address goes in the other side. This is really interesting stuff where tomorrow, if somebody decided to have 4 invoice patterns and you had to do that in different invoice patterns, you could generate that data very quickly, not having to go and start mapping stuff. It's actually really, from a test data generation perspective, this can be really, really useful for folks who need to go do that. Vikram, very cool. Thank you very much. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments.
And yeah, sorry about if my audio is going in and out. I've requested a new computer. It's on its way. So next time we do one of these, I should have a powerful machine.
You and the rest of the world have asked for 18 GPUs, so don't worry about it.
Yes, exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's take this a step further. And we showed you. Yeah.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, go ahead and let's do the last one.
All right, cool. So now I'm going to be putting on the hat as a test manager lead. And so in this situation, my team has automated a bunch of stuff. Test data is working smoothly. So I have hundreds, if not thousands, of records. And now daily, I have false positives happening. Sometimes a machine is not configured properly, and that might cause an issue, something to break. I overall want to see more green on my screen. That's the bottom line. And so I want to understand and gain as many insights as I can from months of data. Rather than going into each one individually, I want the AI to give me recommendations. And so that's what AI-powered Test Insights is designed to do. I, as a test manager, can go in to my test results tab over here. I can results, filter it by a specific type, period, and status, and then go ahead and generate this insight report. Now, this report will tell me things like top failing tests, common errors, error patterns, but more importantly, it's going to give me recommendations at the very bottom. And so recommendations, I can go in and get even further insights by seeing the details. And so in this example, it's telling me that the UI element was no longer valid. And so I was supposed to update a selector. And so that tells me for this studio project, I might need to raise a ticket for my development team to go take a look because something changed and something broke, and that was causing a lot of tests to not return results. And that's a problem for me as a test manager. It's something that needs to get fixed ASAP. And so while you might, if you just had 1 or 2 projects, that might not be an issue. But in situations where you have hundreds or thousands of projects, being able to pinpoint exactly what the issues are on a, let's say, daily basis, AI-powered Insights is able to give you those recommendations. Another is in this situation, there's a error was an SAP kernel error. And so I can identify and see that, oh, well, this might be an issue. SAP is working. It's not an issue. It might be an issue just on this machine where these test cases were executed. And so I, as a developer, can go in or I, as a test lead, can go in and say, hey, IT team, go ahead and take a look at this specific machine because it's giving me potential issues. And so that's just a great way of getting these insights directly from a large amount of information rather than going log by log to identify potential issues in the overall test strategy.
Again, this is really interesting. There's always this task of goes into productivity, right? There's always this task of once the automated tests have run, what failed, what passed, what were the root causes of the failures. Again, as anyone who's done test automation will say, the first thing your mind goes to, did I write the test wrong, right? Was the actual test wrong, or was the underlying application changed? Okay, if those two are out, then make sure that that this was truly a failure. So all of that analysis can be done very quickly. That risk-based analysis of making sure that you have, here were the tests that passed, that failed. Here is the reason for the failure, and investigation into that. The quicker you can make that, the faster you can get to results. Looking at the time, I think we're already taken up about 45, 50 minutes. Vikram, there's a few questions. I think Atmika asked whether Clipboard AI can work from PDF to Excel. I believe the answer is yes, but I'll let you answer it.
Yep, the answer is yes for that. Yep.
Okay. And Raj asks if there are features to refer configuration to system to create data. So what you saw was the test data creation. There's actually a bunch of activities as well in the studio that allow you to create test data that can refer to some of the configurations. But Vikram, can you talk a little bit more about what parameters you can use in order to generate test data?
Yeah. So with the ability of using large language models and providing it any prompts, you have full customization on those details. And so large language models are able to, they know concepts like number, ages, date formats, currency. So you can provide that instructions if you choose to use LLMs. But again, as you mentioned, Ahmed, we have activities within Studio if you want to define it yourselves as well. So both options are available. Do I want to use AI, or do I want to be more rules-based in my random data generation?
Perfect. And Robert's asking, is there a way to trigger Gen AI to validate information from a document during a test execution? You sound like one of our business users who always says, I have this unstructured document. Can you extract data out of it? So the short answer is yes. The long answer is you got to work to figure out what type of data that you want. And yes, you can sometimes use Gen AI. Sometimes you can use other parts of IDP solutions to validate information from a unstructured scanned PDF document, or whatever type of document you have. Vikram, you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, and definitely agree with that, right? So we partner a lot with our IDP team here at UiPath to, whenever we come up with these scenarios, I've always find there's spectrums, right? If I want to be very detailed, then I go through an IDP process of, maybe creating a custom model, and that takes, 3 to 5 days to generate. And I'm required to have a lot of documents to train my ML model. But the beauty of generative AI is, again, I do just have an activity. So I could send a document to a large language model. It provides results with 60, 70, 80% accuracy. And that's good enough for me, because I always have the capability to throw humans in the loop for automated test executions. And so the answer to your question, Robert, is yes, you have the capability of doing a full-fledged IDP solution, or just making a quick call to an LLM model. Those are all supported within our capabilities. So.
Perfect. What I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to put our contact information on the screen. Oh, not this one, not from beginning, from current slide. If I can get my mouse over to the screen. Yeah, I'm having mouse difficulties. There you go. Folks, thank you very much for joining us today. You have our email addresses right here. Connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Vikram, Jenny, thank you very much. For me, this was very insightful. Yes, we've seen this stuff before. It's always really cool to see it every time I see it again. These are some really cool features using generative AI that are here today, that are available to use. And as a tester myself, I can truly appreciate the productivity gain that I could have used years ago as a tester myself. But I'm glad to let everyone know that we do use these features to make our testing much more efficient. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone. We'll connect with you. Take care. Bye-bye.